as we go through this process, we're just going to heat it up. We fluxed it. We're going to add a little bit of solder, go in and then out and roll away, and you'll see that little wave form right there. See, we just need that little bit of solder.
You're going to show that in detail in just a few minutes.
Okay.
Because I got a clip of when you were doing that and just dove real deep into how you make that joint.
So there's two types of rebar. There's the rebar that we use in the stained glass industry to reinforce the windows, and then there's the rebar that we use to tie together and pour concrete around and build bridges. So what we do in the stained glass industry is we actually use a flat stock bar. It comes in 1/4 inch, 3/8, and 1/2 inch, and it's 1/8 of an inch thick. But it's also tinned in zinc. So they take the hot steel and dip it into zinc, and this is what allows your solder to stick to it. Now, as we go through the video, you'll see the process of making your solder stick to this so that the actual rebar can be soldered to the stained glass window. So we're going to get started now, Barb, and we're going to show them. We're going to talk a little bit about what we actually cut the rebar with too.
Yeah, we got to cut the rebar to size.
So, and the one thing you don't want to do is in the first of this video is don't cut the rebar in your studio. Take it outside or go to the back. We put it in a vise, and you see we used a 4-inch grinder with just a grinding disc or a cutoff disc in it. And now what we're going to be doing is once we cut our rebar to length, Barb, and what I do, I cut it to length and then I take about 1/4 of an inch off. And so that when I solder it, it's going to be centered within that, 1/8 of an inch on the top, 1/8 of an inch on the bottom. Now you can see in the video that I'm using a marker and I'm gliding it down the edge of the rebar. Well, that's so that I can put a notch in it. Now I've already measured the molding that goes around it, and because these rebars are running vertical, so the rebar is actually going to sit on top of the molding like this, and then the molding in front will go up against it, and that'll hold the window in place. So if we were running a bunch of horizontal lines, it would be different because they would be notched differently, they would be cut differently, and they would also, the wood would have to be notched. So with this method, because we know the height of the trim molding that we're using, we can notch the zinc coated rebar steel as our reinforcing bar so that it just sits right directly on top of the molding. And that way the window can't slide up and down. And because we're doing a notch, as you'll see as we go through the video, you'll see that the window is actually held against the molding as well at the bottom below the stop. So you'll see that as we go through the video. It's really quite interesting, Barb. You do two different ways. This way we're showing you applying the rebar as a vertical stabilizer.
Okay.
And it can also be applied the same way as a horizontal stabilizer.
Okay. So it's important to secure it in a vise. I know that because it gets hot.
Oh man, hey, the steel conducts heat just like everything else, just like copper or anything else. So not only do you have to be careful while you're notching the rebar, you're also going to want to be careful while you're soldering it, because as you solder more and more, or actually while you're applying the solder to the steel, you see the little notch there, Barb. So what that happens is that goes right on, just like you see in the video. Now that's actually, that piece of steel dropped off a little bit. The height is perfect for the notch. We're about 1/16 of an inch top and bottom on the molding. And then the other molding goes right up against it. And you'll see, because of that notch, that's going to be pressed against the molding behind the window. And then the molding's going to go in front of it. So.
Okay, so then after you notch it, that's when you clean it. And
then we're going to clean it really well. Yeah, because we've heated it up and we've got marker on it. We've got fingerprints on it. We want to clean that really well before we go to the part where we're going to mark the steel rebar in order to attach it to the window vertically. So.
Okay. And so that's the other side.
Right. So you can see that. We did that little notch. And now, as we go through the video, you're going to see, you heat the rebar first, and then you come back and flux it again generously. And then heat it again, and then apply your solder by going straight down and lifting up and just turning the soldering iron ever so slightly, either backwards or forwards, because you want to create a mound on the rebar. And now, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think we have, at the end of the video, we have 3 things that you need to do before you apply this bar to the window, and one of them is what you just said, and the other 2 you always have to do. So we're going to go back to that in a minute, but right now,
yeah. So right now, what I'm doing is we're marking where the joint comes in. We've marked where the joint comes in. We've cleaned it with a wire brush, because remember now, we've already finished this window. It's already been puttied, it's been cleaned, and now we're attaching the rebar. And the idea about the rebar is that it's marked, so you're attaching solder to the rebar, and then we're coming back, and then we're gonna heat up the solder joint where the rebar is and where the joint is, and we're gonna make like just a little wave, just like that, so that it comes out, and that's gonna give it that rigidity and make it really, really strong. So you can see, Barb, in the video that we're using a square.
right.
So this is a vertical ball, and if it's out, you're going to see it.
Yeah.
So we want to, even if the lead is moved over a little bit, the vertical bar will straighten everything up. It could be out like as little as a 32nd of an inch, but the vertical bar will make sure that everything looks really good. So as you can see in the window design, Barb will show you that in the window design, these are the verticals that are in the storefronts of the restaurant. So they work out really well, and you can see as we back up a little bit there that there's a vertical. And then we go into the trees, and that trees and the leaves and everything are so busy. This little bit of action going on with a vertical bar running through it, and like I've explained to you before, you keep in mind that your window has to be reinforced no matter what, unless it's really small. Now these windows are 36 inches tall, and they're 60 and 5/8 wide. So we've got them broke up into 4 individual sections by using applying 3 pieces of 3/8 rebar. And you can see as we go through this process, we're just going to heat it up. We've fluxed it. We're going to add a little bit of solder, go in and then out and roll away, and you'll see that little wave form right there. See, we just need that little bit of solder.
You're going to show that in detail in just a few minutes.
Okay.
Because I got a clip of when you were doing that and just dove real deep into how you make that joint.
So you see the 3 rebars here, and when you look at it, one of them is running up one rail of the entry doors, the other one's running up the other rail of the entry doors, and the other one is running up the vertical storefront next to the palm tree. Now, as you can see, it looks like I have a lot of hinge joints here, y'all, but you know what? Every time I run something vertical in glass, I run it all the way through, and I eliminated every one of the hinge joints in this project. The rebar is simply because it's in a restaurant and we don't want it moving around, and we surely don't want anything happening to it over the next 150 years or so. First, there are 3 steps you need to do before you can actually add the solder to the window. First of all, you need to clean your steel. Second, you're going to mark where the solder is going to go so that it attaches to your window correctly. And then the third thing you have to do is flux your mark generously. Take your soldering iron and we're just going to heat that up. Okay, so there was a little bit of solder on my iron, but we're just going to heat that up and we're going to take that away. So that left that. Okay, that's nothing. That's nothing like what we need to complete our job. Now this is going to sizzle. Now we know it's hot. My iron has had time to recoup it. I'm going to turn my iron sideways, down, and I kind of roll it away, just turn the head, just like that. Ready? So I go down, and then I pick up and turn the head away, and that leaves me a nice little bump right there that's going to attach to the window itself. So it takes a while to add rebars to the window, but as you can see with these other 2 rebars, they're fairly equally spaced. And because of the way the frames are built on the job, I only have to run vertical rebars to make everything stand up. Hey everybody, it's Ed here. And if you like this video that we just showed you, please go ahead and subscribe. Give us a thumbs up. Join us on Monday nights at 7 p.m. for a live Q&A with Barb and Ed here on the ARTyRV channel.